The Sultanate of Maguindanao was a Maguindanaon Islamic state that ruled parts of the island of Mindanao in southern Philippines. Its known historical influence stretches from the peninsula of Zamboanga to the Bay of Sarangani. At its peak, the Sultanate covered the entire island of Mindanao and ruled over the smaller neighboring islands near and around Mindanao. During the era of European colonization, the Sultanate maintained friendly relations with British and Dutch traders. History. Sharif Muhammad Karbungsu I of Johor introduced Islam in the area, which was earlier Hindu-influenced from Srivijaya times, at the end of the 16th century and established himself as sultan seated in Maguindanaon. He exiled some of his people who deviated from the Islamic faith to Cotabato. He subsequently married many local princesses of the Maguindanaon family ruling class in Dulawan and established the Sultanate of Maguindanao seated in Dulawan and virtually as sultan of the whole island of the so-called Mindanao. The Sultanate was usually centered in the valley of Cotabato, as Raf Muhammad Samalan Dipatu and Kudratullah Fakhruddin Naziruddin, popularly known as Kudrat, whose name as a youth was Uluruntong, was one of the greatest known sultans who controlled Mindanao. In his island sanctuary in Sulu, he was known as Sultan Naziruddin and was the sultan of that island, recognized by the Sulu Sultan, and his grave still stands there. Abd al-Rahman, his grandson, continued increasing the Sultanate's power and influence. During the Spanish colonial period, the Sultanate of Maguindanao was able to defend its territory, preventing the Spaniards from colonizing the entire Mindanao and ceding the island of Palawan to the Spanish government in 1705. The island priory, ceded to him by Sulu Sultan Safiuddin. This was to have helped dissuaded Spanish encroachments into the island of Maguindanaon. Chinese gongs. Yellow as a color of royalty and idioms originated from Chinese entered into Mindanao. Royalty was connected to yellow. Yellow color was utilized by royalty. The color yellow was used by the Sultan in Mindanao. Chinese tableware and gongs were exported to the Moros. Merchant Chinese were tranquilly residing alongside the Moros in Maguindanao. List of Maguindanao Sultans. 1. Sharif Muhammad Kabungsuwan. According to the Maguindanao Tarsilis, his father was the Sharif Ali Zain al-Abidin from Arabia, and his mother a member of the Johor royalty. It may be speculated that he arrived on the shores of Mindanao around 1515. 2. Sharif Makkah Alang. He was a son of Muhammad Karbungsuwan and surnamed Sarapada. His mother Anjintabu was a daughter of an Iranian chief from the area now known as Malabang. In 1543, during the Villalobos expedition, some Spaniards were able to go to the mouth of a big river where they were informed by the inhabitants that the chief was called Sarapara. This being a variation of Salapada or Sarapada, it can be surmised that the chief was the Sharif Makkah Alang, especially if it is considered that not only does a Tarsila explicitly state that the Sharif had such a title, but that such a title was not found among his immediate successors. 3. Datubangkaya. He was a son of Sharif Makkah Alang. In 1574, Guido de Lavezaris wrote to the Spanish king that the chief of Mindanao River wanted to become a friend of the Spaniards. In another Spanish report dated 1579, this chief is referred to as Hasulutan, with the information that he was a father of Demon Sankey and that he had already died. This refers probably to Datubangkaya, who by 1574 must have been reigning for some time, since in 1579, his son Demon Sankey was considered by the Spaniards to have been an old man. Datubangkaya could also have been the ruler in the Pulangi who was reported to have died in 1578. 4. Datudimanansangkay. He was a son of Bangkaya. Spanish reports say that he was ruling in 1579 and that he was an old man. The leading daters of the Iranians and Maranaos all claim descent from him. 5. Datusalikula. He was the half-brother of Dimansangkay and also known as Gugu Salikula. Up to early 1597, he appeared to be a leading chief of Maguindanao, Dimansangkay being dead at the time. According to Tarsilas, he married a Sulu princess, and therefore he might have been a Maguindanao chief seen in Jolo in 1597, where he was supposed to have been banished for being restless and rebellious, and who was further described as a brother-in-law of the Sulu ruler and an uncle of the Maguindanao Rajamuda by the Spaniards. He was chief around 1585 to 1597. 6. Kapitanautbuisan. He was a younger half-brother of both Dimansangkay and Salikula. He was sometimes called by the title Kachal. His rule began around 1597 when he displaced Salikula. He controlled his nephew, the Raja Muda, son of Dimansangkay. He must have been chief at least up to 1619, since Dutch sources mention relations with the immediate predecessor of Kudrat at this date. 7. Sultan Kudarata, son of Busan. He was known to the Spaniards as Garalat and to some Dutch writers as Guzarat. In 1619 to 1621, there was war between Wan and Maguindanao, probably dynastic or contest for primacy in the Pulangi. Kudrat must have been involved in this war, for not long after a temporary reversal he appears as exercising some political power over Wan. Furthermore, he must have consolidated his power well enough after this to enable him to attack Sarangani in 1625. He died about the end of 1671 after having ruled about half a century. His rule, with varying fortunes and at different capitals, can therefore be fairly estimated to have taken place from 1619 to 1671. By 1645, he was already using the title of Sultan. As a young man he was entitled Kachal. His great-children referred to him as Nasir-ud-Din. 8. Sultan Dungtidulay. He was a son of Kudrat, and there is a report that he died before his father. If he ruled at all, it must have been for a very short time. He was referred to as Saif-ud-Din by his children. 9. Sultan Bahman. He was a son of Sultan Tijali. He was also known as Minulu Sar Rahmatullah. His sons referred to him as Muhammad Shah. He was Almosabat to William Dampier the Almo al-Las Abraham to the Spaniards. The name of his grandfather Kudrat was also used by him. He was heard of as Sultan early as 1678. Information given to Dutch officials at Ternate was that he died on July 6, 1699. 10. Sultan Kaharud-Din Kuda. He was a younger brother of Barahiman and was sometimes known as Jamal ul-Azam. He also assumed the title of Amir al-Umara as well as that of Maulana. His reign was contested by two of his nephews, the sons of Barahiman. To make more secure his authority, he asked the aid of the Sulu Sultan Shahab-ud-Din, who came over to Samui where Kuda held court. A misunderstanding as well as bitterness due to a long-standing feud brought about a pitched battle between the Sulus and Maguindanaos. In this struggle, the Sulu Sultan personally slew Kuda. This event took place on August 10, 1702. 11. Sultan Bayan al-Anwar. His other regal name was Jalaluddin. Entitled Dipatuan during his lifetime, he was known after his death as Mupat Batua. He was a son of Sultan Barahiman. In 1701, he was already intriguing against his uncle the Sultan. He succeeded to the throne in 1702 and held court in Slangan but was often in Sabugay. His younger brother Jafar Sadiq, the Raja Muda, revolted against him but managed to keep the throne. In 1736, Anwar abdicated in favor of his son Tahir-ud-Din Malanug. He died around 1745. 12. Sultan Muhammad Jafar Sadiq Manamir. He was a younger brother of Sultan Bayan al-Anwar. He was sometimes referred to as Amir-ud-Din, referred to as Maulana while alive. He was known after his death as Shahid Mupat. He contested the reign of his older brother, but he was forced to flee to Tamontaka in 1710. Dutch officials referred to him as the Young King, to distinguish him from Sultan Bayan al-Anwar. By 1725 he had assumed the title of Paduka Shri Sultan. In March 1733, his brother and nephew Malanug attacked his forces in Tamontaka. The latter caused his death in the ensuing struggle. While his brother had power along the coast, Manamir held sway over the interior. His power was recognized in Tamontaka from about 1710 to his death in March 1733. 13. Sultan Muhammad Tahir-ud-Din, a son of Sultan Bayan al-Anwar. He was commonly known to the Spaniards as Dipatu and Malanug. He was also known as Muhammad Shah Amir-ud-Din. In a battle in 1733, he killed his uncle Jafar Sadiq Manamir. In 1736, his father started sharing with him the responsibilities of government. His authority was however contested by two of his cousins, sons of Manamir, forcing him to retire to the interior where he died in Buan around 1748. 14. Sultan Muhammad Khirud-Din. He was a son of Sultan Jafar Sadiq and was better known to Europeans as Pakir Maulana Kamsa or Amir-ud-Din Hamza. He also used the name Azim-ud-Din and assumed the title Amir al-Mu'minin. In 1733, after his father was slain, he began to consider himself heir to the throne and thereupon called himself Raja Muda. The next year, he was formally invested with the duties of a sultan in the presence of the Spanish officials from Zamboanga. With some Spanish aid, he was able to consolidate his position in Tamontaka and contest the rule of his uncle Bayan al-Anwar and later that of his cousin Malanug. But upon the latter's death around 1748, the struggle for the Sultanate ceased. Pakir Maulana Kamsa emerged as paramount chief of Maguindanao. Around 1755, he started to relinquish some of his powers to his younger brother with the condition that his son, Kibad Sariel, would be the Raja Muda. 15. Sultan Paharud-Din. He was a younger brother of Pakir Maulana Kamsa and was known as Datu Ponglok Ipanglu. He began to exercise the powers of Sultan around 1755 and was in the Sultan's seat in the same year when Captain Thomas Forrest paid a visit to Maguindanao. After his death he was known as Mupat Hidayat. 16. Sultan Kibadsahriyl. His more regal title was Muhammad Azim-ud-Din Amir al-Umara. He was a son of Pakir Maulana Kamsa. Even before the death of his uncle the Sultan, he was already being addressed as Sultan. He was friendly towards the Spaniards and at least twice entered into peaceful negotiations with them, namely, in 1780 and 1794. He probably governed from 1780 to 1805. 17. Sultan Kawasa Anwar-ud-Din. He was a son of Kibad Sariel and like his father was also entitled Amir al-Umara. He entered into a peace treaty with the Spaniards in 1805. One of his seals carried the title of Iskandar Julkarnain. He possibly reigned from 1805 to 1830. 18. Sultan Iskandar Qudratullah Muhammad Zadam al-Azam. He was more popularly known as Sultan Antong. He was a grandson of Qubad Sarial and a nephew of Sultan Kawasa. Some Spanish documents carry his name as Iskandar Kudrat Paharuddin. In 1837 and 1845, he entered into friendly treaties with the Spaniards. He died either in 1853 and 1854. 19. Sultan Muhammad Makakwa. He was a grandson of Sultan Kawasa Muayyuddin. His rule can be estimated to have lasted from about 1854 to 1884. He died in Newling. 20. Sultan Muhammad Jalaluddin Pablu, also known as Sultan Wata. He was a son of Sultan Makakwa. His capital was at Banyubu, just opposite the town of Cotabato across the Pulangi. His death took place in 1888. 21. Sultan Mangigin. He was a grandson of the famous Datu Dakula of Sabugay, who in turn was a grandson of Qubad Sarial. He began his rule in 1896. From 1888 to 1896, the Sultanate was vacant. This was probably due to the fact that Datu Atto wanted his brother-in-law Datu Mamaku to become the Sultan. The Spaniards, however, wanted the Sultanate to go to one of the Sabugay datus. Around the end of 1800, Sultan Mangigin transferred his residence from Cotabato to Sabugay. In 1906, he married Raja Putri, the widow of Datu Atto and sister of Datu Mamaku. 22. Sultan Muhammad Hijaban Iskandar Masdurakudrat. He assumed the throne upon Mangigin's death in 1926. By this time, the Sultanate assumed a very ceremonial traditional character. It continued to be the central institution for traditional and religious affairs of the Maguindanaon and Aranan peoples.